La la la. Oh, it's the Hake Report. The Hake Report. La la la.
It's the Hake Report. No longer with Joel and Esteban.
Oh, it's the Hake Report. The Hake Report. La la la. Oh, it's the Hake Report. The Hake Report. La la la.
Welcome to the Hake Report. This is James Hake, your host of the Hake Report. And it is Sunday, January 7th, 2018. Believe it or not, the first Hake Report episode of the new year. It feels like old news already to me, but it is the 7th day, and I feel like I need a break. And already. And I want to talk today about the fact that we are now living in a sanctuary state of California, and we are a sanctuary from hate. There is no hate in California at all, because we're a sanctuary from it. We're a sanctuary for all the illegal aliens to come in from all the other states and enjoy the benefits of being a native-born Californian. And so I want to talk about that, but I also want to talk about something that's very interesting that's been happening lately. Donald Trump. Yes, Donald Trump has been happening for like 3 years already. And he just is so interesting that the media cannot get enough of him. They want to take him down, but they can't. They take themselves down trying to take him down. And then I also want to talk a little bit about stuff that's been going on at Bond. Very interesting things. We had our men's forum this past Thursday. We had the New Year's Eve church service in which Jesse led the congregation in a silent prayer, instructions anyway, about the silent prayer that he urges all people to do. And we updated that silent prayer on the Bond website, which you can find at rebuildingtheman.com/church. And we also want to talk a little bit about the biblical question of last week, which Jesse had. Jesse also always has these biblical questions, and it has lately been sparking the majority of calls to the Jesse Lee Peterson show, which is so interesting because in the past, people have not been very biblically oriented, very spiritual. And I want to remind everybody that although the channel, my channel, is still called The Hake Report with Joel and Esteban, it is actually The Hake Report no longer with Joel and Esteban, unfortunately. But we press on. I want to talk about Colin Flaherty, by the way. Speaking of YouTube stuff, Colin Flaherty was booted off of YouTube yet once more. And Colin Flaherty is a journalist who has covered black on white crime and black violence in general, black mob violence. Specifically, young people have been terrorizing the cities that they live in periodically, quite commonly. And the media kind of covers it up because they feel sorry for the blacks, but that's not really showing love for the blacks, because it's hiding the problem. And so Colin Flaherty has been exposing that, and they call that hate speech. And so I want to talk about that. But you can join in on the conversation by calling 888-775-3773, 888-77-JESSE, because, by the way, that is the call-in number for Jesse Lee Peterson. And a lot of people are shy to call in to Jesse. I recommend they not be, because, as well as to me, because you can really test your knowledge. A lot of times you think you know stuff when you just think to yourself. But then when you talk to somebody, you realize you don't know what you're talking about. And it's a very interesting phenomenon. And by the way, Mark reminded me, Mark is watching right now, thank you, Mark, about the biblical question which is about Psalm 23, where it says, "Yea, as I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I shall fear no evil." What is the valley of the shadow of death? And if you went to the men's forum, if you are a man watching, and you went to the men's forum, you may know the answer, and so do not tell it. But if you didn't go to the men's forum, shame on you, or else you're a woman. And that's a good thing, too. So I want to talk a little bit about Donald Trump. There's this book that came out against Donald Trump. It's called Fire and Fury. It was put out by this guy in glasses, and I have a picture of him, Joel. Joel is my audio engineer now. And this is that guy. Does he look like a guy that you would trust over Trump? I don't think so. He is a Hollywood Reporter, writer. He writes for USA Today, which is very, very liberal. They promote all the liberal stuff. They promote Black Lives Matter as though it's a good thing and all that stuff. And so he writes for those things. And he's written a book about Rupert Murdoch, you know, the Fox News guy. And supposedly, I guess, taking him down or something like that. And so he wrote about the Trump White House. And of course, when you write about the number one publicity man who is loved in a way by the media, you're going to get ratings. And so he's gotten a lot of free publicity. I was one of the guys I follow on Twitter, Mike Cernovich, commented that he trolled the master troll by writing about Trump, and Trump, every time Trump bashes it, it's selling more of his books because it's giving him publicity. But that's not a problem, because even the liberal journalists who are covering this book have noticed that there are like sloppy errors, and he gets basic details wrong and things like that. And I've noticed, I haven't read the book at all. I don't really plan to. I'm not that interested. But I've noticed by watching this guy and looking at the quotes that he's said in the media about President Trump, is that he said that President Trump is one of the least, or if not the least, credible person walking this earth. And that alone tells me that this guy is biased, is lying, and is not to be trusted. He also said that President Trump does not listen, which I've commented about this before, but every person who talks to President Trump, whether they agree or disagree, no matter what Trump has said about them, Dr. Ben Carson, whom Trump bashed pretty hard in the primaries, Dr. Ben Carson met with President Trump, or President-elect Donald Trump, and remarked how good of a listener President Trump is. And so for this guy, that bald-headed guy with glasses who wrote that book about the Trump White House, to say that he does not listen, shows me that this guy did not listen. Is not really an objective observer. So there's that. And by the way, Stephen Miller, a hometown boy, a local, he's like my age. He's actually younger than me, I think. And he is a brilliant guy who works with Trump, works in the White House. He went to Santa Monica High School, this guy, Stephen Miller. And I don't have a picture of him, but he went up into the fake news laboratory of CNN and talked with none other than Jake Tapper this morning on the Sunday shows. They call them the Sunday shows, where they don't pray, they don't go to church, they just talk about politics. Well, Stephen Miller went up and defended Trump quite well and said, basically, according to President Trump, destroyed Jake Tapper by basically defending President Trump's political genius. Because, by the way, with all this, with this book coming out, they've been calling him very much like a child, very childish or something, where they're saying that he is very like self-centered. It's all about him and it's all about the now. And that reminded me of a YouTube video that we put out of Jesse debating this psychologist about President Trump's mental health. And I have a picture of that. YouTube. Is Donald Trump mentally ill? Psychologist Philip Zimbardo versus Jesse Lee Peterson. And also, racism does not exist. And so this whole thing, there's a lot of questions by liberal politicians who are mentally ill, questioning Trump's mental health. They're saying, oh, is he fit to be in office? Meanwhile, when Hillary Clinton was tripping all over the place and getting heat stroke and all that stuff, they didn't question her. She was coughing, hacking up a lung, spitting out cough drops or phlegm or something into her water when she's speaking, just being a sickly person. They called Hillary's health a conspiracy theory when people questioned her health, her fitness to be leading the free world, as they say. So they're trying to act like President Trump is not mentally well. He's actually the most mentally well person in the country, maybe, because he is. Think about all the stuff that is up against him. He has to fight the rhinos. He has to fight the so-called conservative media. Some of them are very much against him, and they act like he's such a racist and sexist and all that stuff. They act like he's so wrong for supporting Judge Roy Moore, whom I talked about last week, who's a good guy, a good man from Alabama. So he has the conservatives against him, many of them. He has the liberals against him. He has the media against him. And yet he's still happy. He talks trash about them and then turns around and meets up with them and is happy. So he's doing pretty well. And I heard Bill Lockwood, whom you may recognize from the Jesse Lee Peterson show. He's on the last Tuesday of every month. He wasn't on last final Tuesday of the month because he was ill, but he has listed off all the things about President Trump's accomplishments, which he got us out of the Paris Climate Accord, which was basically an anti-American redistribution of wealth, climate change conspiracy theory type alarmism thing. And he got us out of a lot of bad situations. He pushed the UN around. He got Israel to be respected in the sense that the president has acknowledged that Jerusalem is the capital of Israel. He's done all these things. He's fixed the tax situation a little bit, which will, I think, go a long way, according to the experts, the trustworthy experts anyways. And so he's done all these things, even while being attacked. He stood against the fake news media that were acting like the alt-right was the only problem in Charlottesville, Virginia. In Charlottesville, Virginia, earlier this year, I think it was August or so, the alt-right and all the white nationalists and the regular people that just want the South to be respected as the South, like it was after the Civil War and during Reconstruction and throughout. They wanted their culture preserved, their history preserved, and it's actually American history that's preserved. But liberals have been catering to the blacks, meaning not the blacks, not the real, genuine black people, but the radical blacks, the squeaky wheels who get the grease, the ones that want all of the statues taken down of Confederate heroes, as well as they are in the same ilk as the atheists who've been trying to take down the Ten Commandments and put up satanic statues next to nativity scenes and things like that. So President Trump stood his ground by saying there were bad people on both sides, hatred on both sides, violence coming from both sides. And in fact, that violence wouldn't have happened had not Antifa attacked the alt-right who were protesting the attack on the South, the attack on white people. And so you have that, you have President Trump standing up for what's right again, which is so refreshing. That tells me more about his mental state and his confidence in what's right than anything that these liberal people can tell me. And so Steve Bannon, by the way, was involved in that situation. And Steve Bannon was a longtime supporter of President Trump, and he has said some things that may have not have been the best in the book. According to the book that I referenced by that bald-headed guy with glasses who thinks Trump doesn't listen and thinks Trump is a child and that's a bad thing. Well, Steve Bannon was right about the Charlottesville situation. Steve Bannon said, stand your ground, because these people don't care about what's true or right. They just want, and they're not gonna accept any apology. They'll take that as a win and as a loss for you. So Steve Bannon is very smart and right about things like this, and it is so refreshing to have somebody who was that powerful and that high up to have that clarity, because that was one of the things that bugged me so badly over the years, where some Republican or not even a Republican would say something that they have the right to say, would say something either true or have some preference which they have the right to have. And it was mainly like white guys who were doing it, conservative whites. But there were others too who would backpedal. They would say something true, get backlash, and backpedal. And President Trump was unique in not backpedaling, because he told the truth and stood by it. And Steve Bannon was part of the crowd that was encouraging Trump to be that way, rather than say, "Oh, I condemn racism from these whites," which that was not the real story. That was not the real problem as much. So for anybody to say that President Trump is the least credible person on earth when he's really standing by what he says, that's silly. It shows me that they're not credible. And so you can check out that debate between Jesse and Philip Zimbardo, by the way. And Philip Zimbardo is a psychologist who wrote about the elephant in the room in Psychology Today. And he had this big debate with Jesse about Trump being this present hedonist, something like that, meaning that he lives in the present and he enjoys the present, basically. And so Philip Zimbardo is a renowned psychologist and a professor emeritus, I may be mispronouncing that word, at Stanford University. And just talking to Jesse, he got consternated, he got annoyed, and he even got so distracted that he emailed all the people in this email exchange, which happened to include me, calling Jesse Lee Peterson a stupid Christian patriarch host who supports Trump and thinks racism doesn't exist and stuff like that. By the way, this guy, Philip Zimbardo, who thinks he's so objective, another one of these liberal psychologists, academic people who hides behind their expertise, he didn't think Obama was a narcissist. He thought Trump was an obvious narcissist, but Obama was not a narcissist. The guy who always talked about me, and who got very thin-skinned anytime a reporter went up against him. Remember when Major Garrett said, Major Garrett's a reporter for ABC or NBC or CBS, one of those things. And Major Garrett is a liberal guy, but he questioned Obama about this situation where Obama basically made this Iran nuclear deal, let Iran have nuclear weapons in 10 years. And he didn't secure the release of 4 U.S. citizen prisoners who were imprisoned in Iran for years. And Major Garrett said, "Can you tell me, Mr. President Obama, how you were content to make this deal and not have, not mention this, the release of these prisoners, not demand the release of these prisoners, or at least bring it up in the deals?" And then Obama was like, "Well, you should know better." And he said that those are 2 separate situations, and basically showed his thin-skinnedness. And they act like President Trump is thin-skinned. President Trump is tough, and they're the ones who are thin-skinned. But they have it backwards. So that is, and somebody is saying, didn't Obama talk about himself in his inaugural address as many times as Trump talked about Jesus Christ in his, or something like that? And that may be. Remember that President Trump is bringing Christianity back into vogue, if you will. He is willingly opening himself as a Christian and pro-Christmas, and that's very nice. And pro-Christmas is not necessarily just Christian, but it's very nice in that there's been an attack on Christianity and Christians, specifically conservative Christians, which are the only ones who have any hope of becoming real Christians, by the way, because you cannot be a liberal Christian. You just can't. You can be an honest person, but you won't be a liberal for long if you're an honest person. And so we all want to be Christians again, and that's something that President Trump is friendly to. I remember at Liberty University, President Trump spoke during his campaign. This is the time when President Trump said 2 Corinthians, and everybody latched onto that because they're so shallow and intellectual and snobby and snooty. President Trump said, where there is God, there is unity and liberty, or something like that. And he said, that's what we need. We Christians need to be united. And that is such a good message that most Christians do not actually support in practice. Because many Christians, and this is a problem in America, that many Christians either don't care, don't know, or they get overly mad about politics, or they just avoid politics, or they become liberal or whatever. And when they raise kids that end up going to college and becoming liberal, or becoming atheists, or just going off the deep end. And that's something that Trump wants to battle, or he encourages Christians to battle. And so that's such a nice thing. President Trump is kind of a patriarch, and that's something that this guy, Philip Zimbardo, that psychologist and professor emeritus at Stanford University, hates. The feminists hate patriarchs. But patriarch is what is biblical. If you think about the things that the old Jewish people referenced, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, those were like the patriarchs. And God spoke to them, and through them, he brought Judaism, which was great, and now Christianity, which is even greater. So there you have it. Patriarch is not bad, but that's a bad word among the liberals. Kind of like the people who hate Jews, they hate Zionism. And yet Zion is in the Bible. Jerusalem and Israel and all that stuff is in the Bible. So why hate Zionism? It's turning good things into bad things. And that's what the liberals like to do. By the way, speaking of that, that reminds me of the way that many liberals have convinced us to change our language. And they've turned words into having hateful connotations so badly that it makes us scared to use them. They've basically polluted the relationship between men and women, even just the way that they relate to each other on a normal, everyday level, whether dating or just talking or all those things. By the way, they've brought women into the workplace, which I think they knew it would cause problems, that they would be able to say, hey, look, these men are causing problems, which we've seen a lot of in the past several weeks, months, and it's been very tiring, this whole hashtag Me Too movement where women are saying, oh, I was sexually harassed or sexually assaulted or whatever they want to say. Well, liberals have basically brainwashed the culture, and it's so amazing that they've been able to do it, to say that illegal alien is hateful, when in reality, a lot of illegal aliens I know or have known or whatever, they've called themselves illegals. But they don't want you to call them illegals. They want you to call them undocumented immigrants. And so that's part of that whole sanctuary that I was talking about, this sanctuary from hate, which is really a sanctuary from the truth. California is now a sanctuary state. And you can call in, by the way, at 888-775-3773, 888-77-JESSE. No I in Jesse, by the way. And so Governor Jerry Brown, whose dad served, by the way, as governor in the past, and actually, even though he was probably a Democrat and bad, was much better than this governor. Jerry Brown signed a bill that was written in part by this liberal guy named Kevin De Leon. This Kevin De Leon guy is such I can't believe that I guess these people are so shameless that that's how they rise to power. When you're shameless, you rise to power whether you're good or evil. So look at Al Sharpton, for example. He's been so shameless even in being a dummy, that he's still respected because he doesn't backtrack on anything. And so anyways, this guy, Kevin De Leon, a pro-illegal alien guy, and the majority of Democrats, it's a majority Democrat state in California now, they have established a sanctuary state. And Jesse did a video on this, and he's writing about it in his new article, which comes out today in WorldNet Daily. And I have a picture of the video that he did. And I will get to your calls. I have a picture of a video that he did, Joel, and it's called California Now a Sanctuary State. And Jesse says that blacks will suffer for this, or they've been suffering for it, they don't know it. And it's their fault, because although blacks are a minority in California, they have a lot of political clout. You see a group of blacks protesting, the media is so brainwashed to think that blacks have legitimate grievances when it comes to quote unquote racism and the police and all that stuff, that blacks kind of lead the way, whether it's for good or bad. And lately it's been for bad. So it is now a sanctuary state where the illegals can get homes, get jobs, go to school, even get scholarships, and walk around with no shame, calling themselves undocumented and unafraid. And I have illegal alien friends, or I used to anyway. I think I do. I may have one who still likes me. But it is not good for you either, you illegal aliens, because you're being rewarded for doing wrong, and you know it's wrong. You may respect all the other laws, but you're not respecting the whole law. And it shows that you don't respect the country. It shows that it's basically an undermining of what's right. And so it's establishing all these citizens, these new citizens, where everyone who's born here is a citizen, which is wrong. I hope Trump is able to get rid of that, by the way, that birthright citizenship thing, because a lot of illegal aliens are coming in here, having babies, and all of a sudden those babies are citizens. And so it's a big mess that the liberals have created, and we've let them, and blacks have let them too. And blacks have suffered the most for it, which Jesse has pointed out, because they are suffering twice the unemployment rate in general that that the rest of the country does on average. So anyways, let me get to my call. Caller, what's your name and where are you calling from?
Morning, James. A great show, of course.
Thank you.
Really
Bible go-to guy.
Listen, Bible go-to guy, Los Angeles. When you were mentioning about the Donald Trump being accused of being a narcissist.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then you correctly pointed out that Obama, if you look at any of his speeches, the transcripts of any of his speeches, the words "me" and "I" are record-setting for
That's what I've heard.
By a president. Record-setting. I mean, busted those records wide open, as if they weren't even. There's not even a close second place. But I'm not concerned about that, James. I'm not. I'm only concerned about what someone is saying about themselves, if it's true. Jesus can go down in history, if you read the New Testaments, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, as one of the greatest narcissists of all time.
Right, because he said, "I am the."
About his father.
He said, "I am the resurrection and the life."
Yeah, and there's many other times he, referenced himself or told people to believe in him and all. Come on,
Right.
But the point is what he was saying true?
Yeah.
That if you believe in him, you will have life. It's not about, because it was always ultimately, when Jesus is concerned, it's ultimately about coming back to him bringing you back to the Father. So it really wasn't about him, and he always said that I am nothing and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But still, he talked much about himself, and the same thing with Donald Trump. Donald Trump talks about himself only in response, really, mostly, not only, but mostly in response to personal attacks. But he does talk about himself in order to encourage others to be like him, to be successful, to be bold. And
he's a self-promoter, which is important. It's important to be able to promote yourself and sell yourself.
Especially if you've got something noble to promote.
Right.
Not like the rappers who are promoting, hatred of women, love of drugs and violence and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So let's get off the word narcissist out there, people. It's the man speaking the truth is all you want to be really mostly concerned about.
Right. That's true. Well, thank you, Bible Go-To Guy.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. And by the way, there was this website that came out. I remember Jesse Lee Peterson talking about it years ago, called Daughters of Narcissistic Mothers. And it was basically this website, very extensive, full of information and kind of testimonials about these women who had mothers who basically had the world and their children revolving around them. And you don't really hear that in the culture on the whole about mothers. But you'll notice that Jesse talks about that a lot, and how he talked just this week. In fact, there was in the men's forum, it happened, and also on the radio show. And that's part of the men's forum. I have a men's forum report on YouTube. We have it on YouTube, and you have a picture of it. Males who hate men and mothers who control their children. Men's forum report, January 2018. And Jesse doesn't mention narcissism specifically, but he said that there's something perverted about mothers who try to keep the boys, the young men, sons, and daughters at home, or tries to keep control of them in some way. Manipulate them through guilt, manipulate them through emotions and things. And that is something that I really, if I think about it, I don't hear about that in the popular culture. I don't watch a lot of Dr. Phil, but I haven't heard Dr. Phil talk about that very much. He may touch on it, but maybe only when it's very extreme. because he's very. I noticed that Dr. Phil and some of those people are very politically correct. They are people pleasing, especially towards women and their wives and things like that. And anyways, check that out because it was very interesting. I have another caller. Caller, what's your name and where are you calling from?
My name's Ignacio.
Hey, Ignacio.
I'm actually calling. Hey, how are you?
All right. How about you?
Good, good.
You said you're calling from Mexico?
Yeah, actually I am.
Wow. And have you been watching church or have you seen church before?
Yes, I've been following Jesse Lee Peterson for a while now, and
right on.
I've been watching church.
Yeah, I think I remember you from that. Cool. Thanks for calling. Welcome to the show.
Yeah, I just wanted to comment really quick because I don't know how much they charge me per minute. But,
oh yeah. All right.
Yeah, but actually I was deported, and it was definitely tough.
Yeah.
But I am I'm grateful. I'm grateful that happened because now I'm actually working really, really hard to, maybe eventually go back to the U.S., but under the correct laws. And I'm a bit tired of seeing these dreamers, and again they're just crying. They think it's the worst thing ever. They're going to get deported. There are millions of people living in Mexico. It's a great country, and maybe I won't be able to go back, but at least I'm making this country, which is my country, great. And I'm really happy to see Trump trying to build a wall.
Yeah.
And he's actually going to push Mexico to fix the problems it's been causing for the people instead of leaving the country.
Right. Yeah. That's a really good point. And it's like you said, it may be the best thing for these people to get deported, although they don't know what's ahead and stuff like that. It's the best thing for you to have the right thing happen. It's kind of like, dad's home with President Trump.
Exactly, and my deportation led to me reconnecting with my father, and now I'm able to become a true Christian because I'm here. I'm only with him. I only have his help. So with the time, I had to ask him for. I had to forgive my father, and that has led me to a better life. And that would have never happened if I wouldn't have gotten deported.
Yeah, and they talk about how deportation is going to break up families. Well, it doesn't necessarily have to if the families go with the kids or with the parents. But you're right. That's an interesting report. I had never even considered that. I knew one illegal alien who sent half his paycheck home to his kids, and his kids basically grew up without him. He spent 18 years here in the States. He's back there now again. But his kids basically grew up without him.
Yeah, it's a tough life, but don't be afraid of the challenge. I knew I was gonna get eventually deported because I was driving to university, and I grew up in Georgia in a small city called Calhoun. Well, it's actually a bigger city now, but I knew it was going to happen, and I knew that was the best thing for me and the best thing for my family because through my forgiveness through my father, my sisters have also forgiven my father and my mother for what they did, and now my sisters are becoming Christian, and all this happened because I was deported. So, again, like I said, I'm just a bit tired, the sanctuary stay and all that. Just, get them deported, and it is the truth. I mean, I hate to see California, Los Angeles, and other cities, they're just changing because people don't want to be part of the American culture, have those values, and I see it here where I'm living, and it just pushes me to become better and to help the people here in Mexico because the United States is not just the only place to live. It is the best place. Yeah. But there are other places in the world, and there are millions and millions of other people around the world that also need help.
For sure. We all have our challenges. How old are you, by the way?
I'm 27.
All right. Wow. And how long ago were you deported?
I think 7 years ago. I was 21 when I arrived. Yeah.
Okay.
21 when they sent me. Sorry.
So Obama deported you.
Yeah. And actually, I was studying aviation maintenance, and I couldn't get in an airplane or ride an airplane, and I was deported in an airplane. So it was like a sweet and sour experience because I was able to ride an airplane for the first time.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I didn't finish school, but it was great, and it just turned out great. Great thing that happened to me.
Did you know in advance that it was going to be the best thing for you, even though you dreaded it, or did you dread it?
No, I didn't. But something told me, and I was actually I started selling a couple of things I had in my room because I was living with my mom and my sister. So I started selling things, and I didn't know why, but I knew that I was gonna eventually come back. I didn't know it was gonna be the best thing.
Yeah.
And obviously in your 20s, you're still a bit lost.
So what happened? You were pulled over by driving without a license, and they basically, because of the state of Georgia is not as lenient as California, they deported you? What happened?
Yeah, actually, I was. I think what happened was, at least that's what the people were saying, that by the third time they pull you over, then immigration comes in, and that was the third time they pulled me over. The first time was I was actually going back home from wrestling practice, and I was driving because my mom couldn't do it. I was doing extracurricular activities, wrestling, and after that was the first time, and I went to jail for like an hour. Then they let me go. The second time was I was working at night and trying to save up money to go to university, and the officer, he didn't arrest me, but he took away the vehicle. I didn't go to jail, but I think that was definitely on my record. And then the third time, I actually dropped my sister off at high school, and at her high school, and I admit it. I took an illegal left turn, and then the officer he arrested me because I didn't have a driver's license. And that morning, probably 30 minutes later, after I was in the county jail, they informed me that immigration now has a hold of me, and if they don't come within like 48 hours, I think I would go, I would start getting processed, and then that eventually led to me being in prison for about 4 or 5 weeks.
Whoa! And
then I was deported after that.
Man. How and when did you find Jesse Lee Peterson?
It was through politics, and I saw him. Oh, what was it? To be honest, I don't remember. But I what I do remember is I dove really deep into his videos. All the videos. Also Thomas Sowell. I'm a big fan.
Nice.
I love to read, and I just wanted to be a Christian for the longest time, but something kept blocking me. And Jesse, basically said, if you don't, forgive your parents, your father, and I did it, and it was the greatest thing ever. I don't have anger in my heart anymore. And the week after, I also forgave other people, and it has just been crazy. So now I get up and I read the Bible, and it has dramatically just changed my life, what Jesse continues to say, and it's just great, and it's just making me a better man. And these young kids down in Mexico, it's very sad, very sad. Just like it's happening to the African American community, and it's also happening in the Hispanic community in the United States. It's happening here as well. It's catching up in Mexico. The values here, they're starting to slowly disappear. People are becoming, more liberal, things like that, and it's just going downhill. But I speak with people because I'm an English teacher, so it's I have an opportunity. I have a small platform to speak with these young guys and tell them the truth. Tell them the truth that they are not men just because they see the society. You have to first forgive your father, and I see that again and again. they have problems with their parents.
Yeah. Yep, that's true. And do they have the same like out of wedlock birth rate as they have up here, where it's like upwards of 50%?
No, I looked at the statistics in the U.S., but in Mexico I didn't look it up. It's a little bit harder to find good statistics in Mexico, just because the people or the companies that try to conduct these studies, they can't really go to the houses, because of people are afraid, who's outside, things like that, because of the very tough crime. So it's a little bit difficult to find those statistics, but I am seeing it that I see it in my own family, and I tell them that it's they're having children out of wedlock, and just because of some small problem, they just they end up splitting up, and that's just not right. They decided to have children or they decided to have sex before marriage, and there are consequences. And at the end of the day, who ends up suffering are the children, and the cycle continues.
Yeah, that's true. Well, good for you telling them that, because that's not always easy for family members and people who, quote unquote, love each other to tell them, because that's not the most comfortable thing.
No. But it's funny because they just look at me and they're just quiet.
They know you're right.
Yeah, exactly. It takes them a while. It took me many years, but eventually they'll get there.
Do you have any kids?
No, I don't have any kids. No, I am actually waiting to starting to talk with this girl, but I told her that there's not going to be any premarital sex or anything, and again, I'm receiving respect, so I really like it. It's a very difficult thing to say to somebody you don't know that much, but it is powerful. It is very, very powerful, and I thank Jesse for this 100%, and it's just one good thing is leading to another good thing, and it's just at the end of the day, I am becoming a man, and it feels great. It feels powerful, and I see the truth. I see what Jesse says. There's good and there's bad, and I see it, and it is just powerful.
That's cool, man. And 27 years old, man. That's You never know who's listening and who's like Jesse says, you never know who's listening and who's really getting helped from the truth. Yeah,
exactly.
Well, I appreciate the call, Ignacio. Anything else?
No. Thank you very much for giving me an opportunity to speak. I'm a big fan. I subscribe to the channel and everything, and I'm working hard. And if United States gives me an opportunity with my skills to go back, I'll be grateful.
Nice.
And if not, I'm that country is the greatest country. And I'm bringing those values of Christianity that I learned and grew up over there, and I'm bringing them here. And that is just that's there's nothing else I can ask for. I don't have many things, but I have God, and I am rich, and I'm rich beyond my wildest dreams, and that's truly all I can ask for.
Well, that's cool, man. I appreciate your genuineness too. You're like a mature person at 27, which is only right, to be honest, but it's kind of rare, and so I appreciate that.
Yeah, no, thank you, and good luck with the channel. I'm going to be a big supporter, and I love the shirt, King of the Cage.
Cool. Yeah, I appreciate it. Thanks, Ignacio.
Thank you. Have a good day.
You too. Bye.
Bye.
Wow, that's so cool. An illegal alien, a former illegal alien, called the Hake Report. You heard it here first. And Jesse's helped him out by just being an example and telling the truth. That is so nice. And he mentioned about addressing out-of-wedlock birth within his own family and telling them that it's wrong. I remember sitting in a situation where I visited these girls that I knew from college. They were all staying in a house together. One of them comes home and says, we're having like a barbecue in the back, and says, I'm pregnant. And one of the other girls goes, ooh, and then was just like cozying up to her, acting all sweet and syrupy and so excited, congratulating her. And this girl was not married, and there was no mention of the father or anything. And I think it's this sanctuary mentality where you don't want to make the person feel bad because that could be hateful. You don't want to let these people suffer in the guilt of doing wrong, even though it's good that she's keeping the baby, not having an abortion, but that's a very low standard to have. Oh man, I just lost my call. Well, you do what's right and you don't cater to people for being wrong, but there's this knee-jerk reaction by women and many men now to not let the person feel guilty, not look like you're being judgmental if you're white, not look like you're racist if you're a man, not look like you're sexist or like you hate women or like you just want sex or anything like that. So it's so bad that people just can't be normal around each other. And that guy, Ignacio, was such a normal guy. And yet he stood for what's right. And that's part of being normal, in my opinion. Because it's abnormal to be evil. And it should become less and less accepted to do wrong. So, and to mama them. That's like what Mark is saying. So, anyways, I wanted to mention, at least briefly here, I have a couple of interns, and they're doing video work for me. Some of them are more skilled at video editing than I am. I'm not that skilled, but I'm pretty good. And so I was rewatching this Politicon debate from last July or August or something like that, or June, where Jesse debated Representative Ted Lieu, Lion Ted Lieu, not to be confused with Ted Cruz, who is actually a halfway decent guy, really decent guy in general. Ted Lieu is a liberal Asian politician who represents basically this area of LA where we are, kind of up and down the coast a little bit in the LA area. And he is pro illegal immigration. He pretends to be like kind of a jerk on Twitter, kind of like how he's trying to imitate Trump and it's not working very well. But he was there pretending to be Christian, quoting the Bible, saying about the illegals, talking about, I quote the Bible where it says, I was hungry and you welcomed me in. I was thirsty and you gave me water. All pretending to be serious and somber and compassionate. But in reality, he's just a liberal. I don't know if he knows how fake he is. But anyway, he was there. And the ACLU, whom Jesse called un-American, rightly so, and dishonest and lying. The ACLU, some guy named Hector Viagra or something like that. I might be mispronouncing that. But anyways, he was there, and this guy Van Newkirk from The Atlantic was there. And The Atlantic, oh boy, Colin Flaherty bashed The Atlantic pretty well in his final YouTube video before he got kicked off. The Atlantic is just one of the most respected magazines in America because they've been supported by liberals for a long time and their stories read by liberals, as Colin Flaherty said. And they hire black liberals who pretend that racism is real and a problem for blacks. And it's also real and a problem for Hispanics and anybody who's not white, according to these people. So he was there, and this woman, Julissa Arce, whom Jesse debated on the Jesse Lee Peterson show leading up to the Politicon discussion. And she was an illegal alien for a long time and started working for Goldman Sachs or something like that. Just climbed up the ladder because she was smart and dedicated to school like a lot of girls lately are. So Jesse debated all of them along with moderator Krystal Ball, formerly of MSNBC or CNN, one of those people. Krystal Ball is actually a media personality. I think she's like my age, believe it or not. So anyways, Jesse debated them, and I have a picture of because KPCC picked it up and said, political debate on immigration and the wall turns heated. And they're showing this little picture of Ted Lieu and Julissa Arce, but they're not showing Jesse. But anyways, it's really about Jesse, because Jesse just told the truth in that discussion. Said, I want the wall, and Trump is doing right, and Obama did wrong, and the ACLU is un-American. They stand for everything wrong. And people like Julissa, Julissa in the debate says, I didn't think of blacks as second-class citizens, because Jesse points out that many in Mexico and in the States, the Hispanics hate the blacks, many of them. And if you're darker, you're discriminated against in Mexico and in the States by the Hispanics. They value the lighter skin for some reason. And because they're shallow like that. And so they think that the whites are like that here too, when in reality the whites in general don't really care about that stuff. And so she said, I know that this country treated blacks like second-class citizens. And Jesse says, it's typical for liberals like her to use blacks. She doesn't care about black people. She's just using them to advance her agenda. And Krystal Ball is like, oh, no personal attacks. And Jesse said, she attacked me. She said stuff that I said wasn't true, and it is true. She attacked me. That's an attack. And it was very, very entertaining. It's going to be good. We'll have it out for you this week, I believe. And so that will be coming out. Look out for that. We have the YouTube video from that. Kind of a late thing, but it's been about almost 6 months since that Politicon debate. And I also want to point out, real quick, I want to tell you that Colin Flaherty's YouTube channel has been taken down. So go to his Facebook page, facebook.com/WGBleedAlot. WG stands for white girl. It's White Girl Bleed a Lot is his main Facebook page. And he's putting up his formerly YouTube videos. His videos are going there for the time being. Also follow him on Twitter, @Colin Flaherty. He has been under attack by YouTube for quote-unquote hate speech. But I listened to the entire video that was taken down for hate speech in addition to his entire channel. I didn't listen to every video, but I listened to that video where he's talking about how The Atlantic magazine is saying that white people are to blame. White people cause black crime. So says the venerable Atlantic magazine. That video was put up, and within an hour, it was taken down, and his channel is no longer. He's had to establish new channels over and over again. He mentions that in Jesse's interview with him on The Fallen State. Check that out if you haven't seen it. Jesse interviewed Colin Flaherty on The Fallen State, and we may have him back on soon because he's been under attack for telling the truth. And he's not alt-right where he thinks, oh, this is genetic. No, he's not like that at all. Not everybody in the alt-right thinks that, but some do. Basically, he's pointing out that black crime is both a hugely disproportionate problem, both black on white, black on Asian, black on old people, black on disabled people, and it's covered up by the media. The media denies and all that stuff. He went on a podcast recently where this guy was basically mocking him, just assuming that this guy, this funny man was assuming that Colin just doesn't like black people, is just mad because his neighborhood of Wilmington, Delaware changed. Colin grew up in Wilmington, Delaware. So make sure you check it out. And Colin Flaherty, by the way, said that Jesse Lee Peterson is the most important person in America. And that's true because Jesse's pointing out the real problems among all people, including blacks. I'm going to go to my call real quick, and then we're going to wrap up. Caller, what's your name and where are you calling from?
Hey, what's going on, James? This is KT calling from Maryland. How are you?
All right, KT, nice to hear from you.
Good. Nice show. I love that talk you had with
Ignacio.
What's his name? Ignacio. That was a very good call.
I agree.
Interesting conversation.
Yeah, for
And
sure.
I just wanted to make a comment about Colin Flaherty.
Yeah.
I liked his content. You know, I was, I watch his videos and I always take them in with a grain of salt because I feel like Colin comes from a place of anger. You know.
Yeah, maybe so. He is definitely not as spiritual as Jesse. Or
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
Yeah.
So
I
he
noticed that a
does
little
come
bit.
off. Yeah, he comes from a place of anger, and you know, sometimes watching his videos can get a little toxic. So I kind of watch them here and there, you know, in little bits and little, you know, and you know, take them in with a grain of salt.
Yeah, I don't watch them all the time. They're very informative when I do watch them. And yeah, you don't know anybody's motivation. I mean, look at all these reporters, these so-called journalists. They're coming from a place of anger towards the president. And
Exactly.
Colin's not a perfect man. So
Right.
yeah, I mean, you should take everything, even what Jesse says. You have to know for yourself, and just take what's true. That you stick with what you know, basically. You're right.
Exactly.
Well,
And you know, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
well, I was about to wrap up, but any last comment?
Yeah, I was just going to say that was unfortunate for his YouTube to get, you know, shut down.
Yeah.
I hope he can come back and, you know, come back in another form. But anyways, this was a great show. Enjoyed it. Keep up the great work, and we'll be here waiting for church.
Cool. Thank you, KT. Appreciate it.
All right.
Yeah, we have church in less than an hour at 11 a.m. Pacific time, which is 1 p.m. Central, 2 p.m. Eastern. So go to rebuildingtheman.com/church. And thank you guys for tuning in. This was a fun show. And thank you, Ignacio, for the call. I appreciate that. We'll be back next week. This has been the Hake Report.